Hello and welcome to the presentation on the analysis of non-farm use and subdivision applications in the agricultural land reserve. My name is Walapak Polasap, and I'm here to represent my team members. We are a team of researchers from Kwantlen Polytechnic University's Institute for Sustainable Food Systems. Our university operates on unceded traditional and ancestral lands of the Kwantlen, Musqueam, Catfi, Samiamu, Sawasan, Kikite, and Coquitlam peoples. And our institute engages in multidisciplinary applied research and extension to cultivate sustainable regional food systems that advance the food sovereignty goals of diverse communities. The presentation today is an example of our applied research work. Recent international conflicts, as well as health and economic crises, have exacerbated our structural inequity. Food security is on top of everyone's mind, and building resilient local regional food systems will be one of the most important strategies for our local governments going forward. A crucial element in our food system is arable land, and it's been a trend all over the world that land use changes are usually driven by socioeconomic factors such as population growth, urbanization, and economic development. For us in British Columbia, we are lucky to have the Agricultural Land Commission, or the ALC, and the Agricultural Land Reserve, or the ALR. We have more or less stabilized the loss of prime agricultural land at this time. The threat of losing agricultural land through ALR exclusion is comparatively small. However, we think that a bigger threat is the diminishing production capacity when land is not used for farming. And the issue that we haven't been able to overcome in our region is how to increase the use of ALR land for agricultural purposes. Generally, government agencies can only encourage people to farm, but ultimately the decision is up to landowners. And we think that when land is used for other purposes, over time, farming will be less viable on these lands, and ultimately this may contribute to the argument for landowners to take the lands out of the ALR. So currently, landowners may apply to subdivide their lands or use the lands for non-farm activities. And over the years, there has been a number of such applications by landowner to the ALC. However, there had never been a study addressing the current use of the lands after non-farm use and subdivision activities were approved. So the goal of our research is simple. Since it's never been done before, we would like to develop a methodology to track and assess agricultural land use and ownership change in relation to successful non-farm use and subdivision applications. Our study has been supported by various entities, namely the Real Estate Foundation of BC, Metro Vancouver, the City of Delta, the City of Richmond, the City of Surrey, the City of Maple Ridge, and the City of Pitt Meadows. We have two research questions. First, do approved applications encourage or detract agricultural use of the ALR lands? Second, have there been changes in parcel ownership within 3 years after non-farm use and subdivision activities have been approved? Of all applications submitted to the ALC, nearly 3/4 were non-farm use and subdivision applications. And within the non-farm use and subdivision applications submitted, about 60% of these were approved. And these approved applications were ones that we studied. So we looked at successful applications from 2006 to 2016 in Metro Vancouver Regional District, 6 municipalities in Metro Vancouver, so 6 major agricultural municipalities, which are Delta, Surrey, Richmond, Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadow, and Township of Langley. And we also look at 3 regional districts in the Okanagan, include the regional district of Central Okanagan, regional district of North Okanagan, and regional district of Okanagan-Similkameen. Then the reason that we focus on these 4 regional districts is because these regions are one of the most important agricultural region in BC, and their farmland prices has been skyrocketing. To answer our research questions, we had to build one big database, which combined data from 3 different sources. First, we reviewed all the approved application letters. These letters are sent by the ALC to applicants to tell them about the ALC decision on their applications. And we only look at the approved applications. And these letters are in digital form and can be downloaded from the ALC website, so it's publicly available. Then with these letters, we were able to get information about the applications, including the location of those, including the location of the parcels under those applications. So each land parcel has unique identification number or the PID. So in the second step, we needed to verify the PID and to make sure that those PIDs are still current, because some of the applications were older. So we have to make sure that currently those PIDs still exist. And this is mainly also mostly because some parcel could get subdivided and receive new PIDs. So at this stage, we use the BC government application called iMap BC to verify all this PID. And finally, in the last step, using the verified PIDs, we retrieved property class information and history of sale information from the BC assessment database. This is where we determined if a particular parcel is used for agricultural purposes or not, and if its ownership has changed since the applications were approved. So we are going to divide our results into 3 parts. The first part takes a look at the applications and their characteristics. The second part looks at land use on the parcels under those applications. And the third part investigates the transfer of ownership on these lands. So let's start with the first part. We have one question asked: how many and what types of applications have there been? So after we reviewed all the application, we had 540 approved applications in our study areas, 226 in the 6 municipalities in Metro Vancouver, and 314 in 3 regional districts in the Okanagan. So this figure shows a breakdown between the non-farm use and subdivision applications. So we can see that Metro Vancouver in the lower bar has a little bit more non-farm use applications, while the other regional districts in the Okanagan seems to have a little bit more subdivision applications for the RDOS, Okanagan-Similkameen, and RDNO, North Okanagan, and the RDCO, Central Okanagan, is pretty similar. Between similar amount of applications between the non-farm use and subdivision applications. And next we have to define a little bit the types of the non-farm use applications and subdivisions. So we have to code them. So we read the application and then code them into different categories. For example, we have 7 categories for non-farm use. The first one is commercial, defined as commercial activities not related to primary agricultural production or processing, such as daycares, golf courses, and restaurants. So a nonprofit is defined as non-commercial activities related to or conducted by nonprofit organizations such as care facilities, animal shelters, schools, churches, or temples. Residential and attendant structures, defined as structures intended for residential uses of family members, such as secondary dwellings, swimming pools, riding area for private use. For this category, though, effective December 31st, 2021, so the regulation has changed that from now on, people do not have to apply for application anymore if they want to have a second dwelling. And next is support facility or activities, defined as activities intended to support primary agriculture production or processing, such as farm worker housing, winemaking workshop, or food processing center, food processing area. And next is recreation and conservation. It's defined as recreational and conservational activities, such as walking trails, park, and natural habitat areas. Next is transportation. It's defined as activities related to transportation purposes, such as building roads and railway tracks. And finally, utilities, defined as activities related to services, such as installing electrical transformers, telecommunication towers, sewer, and gas line. And for subdivision activity, we code them in, I'm sorry, oops, there we go. So for subdivision activity, we coded them in 4 different types. So boundary adjustment involves 2 or more parcels having their boundary lines adjusted, resulting in different acreage for all the parcels involved. So the number of parcels after this activity is carried out remain the same. Consolidation involves 2 or more parcels being combined, creating a new parcel of a bigger size. The number of parcels after this activity is carried out is smaller than the starting number of parcels when the application goes in. So next is home site severance, involves a subdivision activity to create a separate parcel by landowner who has been continuously owned and occupied a property before the ALR was established. And so finally, the last one is subdivision, so which is subdivide, involves at least one parcel being divided into 2 or more parcels, creating parcels of a smaller size. The number of parcels after this activity is carried out is greater than the starting number of parcels. So here goes with some key results. So for the non-farm use activities only, for the non-farm use applications, we have 271 applications. And for non-farm use purposes, we take a look at them and we see that 27% for transportation purposes. That comes in number 1, 20% for utility, and the next highest one is commercial activities at 18%. We code them into different colors in light green and dark green, because we thought that the dark green one, commercial, residential, and supporting activities, so these are specifically for the private benefits of landowner. However, for the lighter color one, they seem to provide benefits to the greater community and for the general public as well. So we just wanted to point that out a little bit. And here are the number of approved subdivision activities. So half of the applications are for subdivide, creating more parcels. And here we take a look at non-farm use applications, and we look at the area that is affected, because sometimes each application of non-farm uses, they're quite different, because in some uses, they can be temporary, such as you apply for the land to be used as wedding or concert venues, or you put a mobile housing unit on. So these types are categorized as temporary use, and they do not really impact the future use of the land surface itself. However, other uses can be permanent, such as if we build roads, then we cover the area that could be farmed in the future. So these are more permanent. But when we look at it, we saw that the highest number of applications were for transportation, and also the area were highest as well at about at nearly 700 applications. So, and these are more or less these are more permanent than other uses. Next, we will look at the change in land use over time. So we asked 2 questions. Are ALR parcels in which non-farm use and subdivision activities were approved currently used for agricultural purposes? And second, do non-farm use and subdivision activities affect agricultural land use in the same way? And to find out whether the land is used for agriculture or not is not such a straightforward issue. So we thought about, going to the land, visiting the land, and take a look, and take a look and see. But then it's just impossible to do to visit all these parcels. And sometimes even if you go, you won't be able to see from the side of the road without permission to go in. So we thought that the easiest way and the more official way to do it, even though it might not be 100% accurate, but it is the best data that we have right now, is we're using data from the BC assessment because the data is collected for tax purposes. So each parcel will be assigned a different class. So we look whether each parcel has a farm class status or not, and that would answer our question whether, okay, is it used for farming? If it is assigned a farm class status, then we assume that it is used for farming. So that's the best data that we have right now. So here is a summary, just an overview. We have investigated 540 applications, but oftentimes there are more number of parcels involved in one application. And so that's why we have 915 parcels recorded. And 384 parcels are under non-farm use applications, 531 parcels under subdivision applications. And when we look at the pie chart on the right, so we'll see that Metro Vancouver has a little bit more number of parcels overall compared to the other regional districts. And so we asked, lands currently being used for agriculture. Again, we used farm class data from BC assessment to answer whether it's used for agriculture or not. And the year that we assessed this is in 2019. So we divide the lands into 2 groups. The first on the top bar is lands under subdivision applications, and the lower bar lands under non-farm use applications. And when we look at it like this, it looks like they're pretty similar, a little bit half and half, a little bit more than half that they're not used for farming. And that seems to be the trend as well when we look at data from the agricultural land use inventory in BC. That seemed to be the case, that a little bit more that in these areas that they're not used for farming currently. So now we're going to look specifically on parcel under non-farm use applications to compare between different non-farm use activities. So here is, as an example, we have support activity, residential, and commercial. So these are different non-farm use activities. And here we see that the percentage or the number of parcels that are used for farming seems to be higher when those applications go under the support activities. And then for applications that go under the commercial purposes, those lands seem to have a lower percentage of those land having a farm class status. And now we are going to look at the change in farm class status. So we will compare farm class status at the year prior to the approval of these applications and 2019. And we categorize the change into 4 categories. The first one is no change. always had a farm class status, meaning that prior to the application, this particular parcel is farm, and then in 2019, it is still farm. And then the second category is no change, never had a farm class status, meaning that prior to the application, that particular parcel didn't have a farm class status, and then in 2019, that parcel still doesn't have a farm class status. The next category is a change from having a farm class status to not having a farm class status. And finally, in the fourth category is change from not having a farm class status to having a farm class status. So here we divide again the lands into two categories. On the left is the land that under non-farm use applications, and on the right are the lands that are under the subdivision applications. Again, the change in farm class status divided in four categories. As mentioned previously, the dark green is no change, remain farmed. The dark pink is no change, remain not farmed. And the light pink is changing from farm to not farm, and the light green is changing from not farm to farm. And the dark green and the dark pink representing no change. It's sort of like whatever landowner had before. Seems like this application didn't really quite affect the use of the land. So there's no change in this farm class status. The light pink and the light green represent a change. The light pink represent a change in a little bit of a worse way because it used to be farm and now it's not farm. And the light green represent a change in a better way. It used not to farm and now it's farm. And what we see here is that the light pink, the percentage of the light pink it's higher than the percentage. The percentage of the light pink for the subdivision application is higher than the percentage of the light pink in the non-farm use application. So it seems that once lands are subdivided, a higher percentage of them change from having a farm class status to not having a farm class status. Now we look further, specifically on parcels under subdivision applications. Now we are going to compare between parent and child parcels. And again, we have 531 parcels recorded under subdivision application, and we have 194 recorded as parent parcel, 337 recorded as child parcel. So I'm going to explain a little bit what parent and child parcels mean. So here is an example. So we have to do this one by one on iMap BC application. So first we look at each application. Here, starting with this is called a parent parcel because this whole purple area, this area is the original PID or the parcel boundary that go under the application for subdivision. And then when we look at it, if you look at it, there is a line in the middle here represent that, oh, so now actually it looks like two parcels instead of one. It means that originally it was one parcel and now it became, after the application was approved, now that original parcel became two parcels like that. So the original parcel is called parent parcel, and the two new parcels that were created after the application was approved would be called children parcels. So now here in this case, we have child parcel 1 in the light purple on the right, and then we have child parcel 2 in highlighted in red on the left. So the way we compare the farm class, the change in farm class status is that if the starting original parent parcel was farm, then we compare with the current farm class status of child parcel 1 and child parcel 2. So, but both started with original parcel being farm, and then what happens afterwards. So that's when we go into the BC assessment data and compare. So Here is the comparison between the parent and child parcel in terms of the change in farm class status. So the top bar represent parcels that will classify as parent parcel, and then the lower bar are those parcels classified as child parcels. And we see here that again, the area in light pink is larger in the child parcel group, meaning that these are new parcels that were that were that were that that occurred after the subdivision applications, and so it means that these new parcels that happened, they tend to be a little bit, they tend to have a little bit more of a change in farm class status from originally being farm and then now it's not farm. So next we are going to take a look at the change in ownership. We ask one question: does the change in ownership occur more frequently for parcels under subdivision applications? So how do we collect data? So we use the BC assessment data to see the history of sale, and we limit it to the sale that occurred within 3 years after the application was approved. And we thought we limited to 3 years because generally, if the applications were approved, the landowners will have 3 years to execute the activities. If they haven't done it, then they have to reapply again. So we thought, okay, 3 years, the 3-year rule seems to make sense. So we'll stick with the 3 years to see also whether after the applications were approved, have these lands changed hand or not. And then we also asked BC Assessment to help us to determine whether the change in ownership occurred within the family members or not. And we really don't have any way to know that. So we use an assumption that if the last name of new and previous owners were the same, we assume that those sales occur between family members. And here's the data on ownership change. So again, we divided into 2 groups. The one on the right is parcels under subdivision application, and the one on the left are parcels under non-farm use application. And overall, though, if we look at overall application, both non-farm use and subdivision combined, overall 36% did not change hands, while 34% did. And within the 34% that change hand, most of them, nearly 80% of them, the ownership were transferred to people within their own families. But when we look at these parcels separately, for those parcels that goes under subdivision and those parcels that goes under non-farm use application, it looks that those parcels that went under the subdivision applications were more likely to be sold or have their ownership changed. 75% here compared to 48% there on the left. Now, specifically on parcels under subdivision applications, and again, we divide the parcels into parent and child parcels, so divided them into 2 groups. So here the top bar represent lands under classified as child parcels. These are new parcels occurred as a result of the subdivision applications. And then the lower bar are represented the lands that are classified as parent parcels. So they are the original parcel and they still remain there. So here it looks that the higher percentage of the parcels that are classified as child parcels would have their ownership change. That's 80% compared to 67% for parents parcels. So new parcels that are created after the subdivision application was approved are more likely to have a change in ownership. Now, this one is a little bit difficult to understand, but I'll try to explain. So now we're going to put 2 dimension together. One dimension is the ownership change, and another dimension is the farm class status change. So the first dimension, ownership change, the first bar are those parcels that had their ownership change. So we'll say sold. So the first bar are those parcels that have been sold, have their ownership change, and the lower bar are those parcels that were not sold, so didn't have their ownership change. And within the first and within the top and the lower bars, we also classify them, break them into farm class status change as well. Remember, we talked about 4 different types of change: no change, but have always been farmed, or no change and has not been farmed, and then changing from farm to not farm, and changing not farm to farm. Again, we wanted to emphasize the light pink one because that represents a little bit of a concern for us, because this, we had those parcels had a farm class status change from previously farmed before the application went in, and now is not used for farming. So we see that the light pink area there in the top bar is a little bit higher, like 21% there in the top bar compared to 10% in the lower bar. So it looks like for those parcels that have been sold, a higher percentage of them have their farm class status changed from not from farm to not farm. And that's it for our data. So I wanted to give you with a few key points just to summarize. So first of all, we have to emphasize though that all these data that we presented today are observational data. We did not make any causational relationships. So we don't say that, oh, because this happened and so that happened. That there are no causational relationships here that we can say perfectly. These are just observational data. And it's the first time that we look at this data. So we hope that at least, we started this, and we hope that maybe in the future there'll be better studies that use this data to try to provide more insights into it. And the next point is, we know that nearly 30% of all approved non-farm use applications were for transportation purposes, and the lands involved were nearly 700 hectares. And and it is still important to have safe transportation ways, right? It's still important. However, at the same time, this represents a trade-off between agriculture and public goods. And we see that usually when we need to build roads, where do we find land? Oh, we have to use agricultural land. Oh, we have to use agricultural land. 1 hectare here and there, half an hectare there, or 2 hectares there, and over time, it accumulates to be quite a bit. So this is something that could be looked into a little bit further. And the next point is that overall, non-farm use and subdivision applications do not appear to lead to more agricultural use of ALR lands. And that's what we see from change in farm class status. We see that the majority, 80% of it didn't change. So if those lands were used for farming, it doesn't matter that the application went in, those lands still used for farming. Or if those lands are not used for farming, after the application went in, they're still not used for farming. Those are a lot of them that didn't seem like these applications lead to a positive change in the use of ALR land. And the next point is parcels under subdivision applications appear to be more likely to have their ownership transfer. And that also makes sense as well, that, if you're a farmer and if you want to, say, for example, if you want to retire and you want to subdivide your land to give to your children, then you have to do that, and that makes sense. So the ownership will be transferred after you subdivide, but we can't say anything much more because we don't really study the purposes of these subdivisions, or what they've done with it, or who the ownership has been changed to. So again, further studies could be needed here. And finally, new parcels created from subdivision applications had a higher percentage of land not currently being farmed. So these again are observational data. So that's what we see. There could be more stories to it. So I think for this type of study, it would be really good if further study can be done, further analysis can be done, and we hope that our study is a good starting step, and we have provided a methodology to do this. And I think in the future, other researchers can adjust our methodologies to be easier, to be more accurate, for example. And so that's it for us today. And thank you so much. And if you would like to learn more about the study or to learn more about us, please visit our website here. And hope to see you again in the next presentation. Thank you. Bye.